I can't hear you. I am so sorry. Can you having a problem here?
Mics. They're messing with the mics. They're messing with the
There you
mics.
go.
My
Oh,
main man, Greg, how's it going today?
going great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I have my co-host Rashid. Both of us is we're Rashid and Rashid. Um,
Rashida Machine, love it.
um, Greg, let's get started right off the bat. I got to ask you something. What is going on with this crazy president and his policies and the Fed? And where is he taking the markets?
Well, look, in my view, presidents are puppets, all of them. We have a fake government that they're trying to throw in our face to be the real government, but it's the central banks that are running the world today.
Can you
They're
hear me?
driving, they own the financial system, so they do whatever they want with everybody. The propaganda is getting worse, though. The misdirection, the fake news, it's just completely out of control. Look, I think people like you and I clearly are able to understand what's going on here. This crazy environment, surging prices, no end in sight, despite the fact that they're trying to push yet another lie down people's throats. Remember, it was temporary. Now it's we're peaking with regard to inflation, and we haven't even seen. We're not even close to the top here. With trillions of dollars that have been added to the money supply well, it just hasn't stopped for as far back as you want to go. But if you want to look at just the meltdown of 2008, we've watched the money supply balloon since that time, and since COVID has ballooned even further. Meanwhile, we have money velocity, the rate at which cash moves through our economy, near historic lows, and we're still seeing inflation out of control. Look, this is deliberate, in my opinion. They are trying to crush people, and they're going to continue to do so. They're literally in the middle of a wipeout of an entire class of people, and they're going to continue to keep that pressure on until they finish what they started over a century ago. Central banks to be the lenders and buyers of last resort, to become the government of the world, and this is where we are today. It's completely out of control. But I sincerely believe we haven't seen anything yet. I think it's going to get a lot worse.
I remember the last time we were talking, you were telling me that it's going to be feudalism and there will be a massive loss of life, and,
Hmm.
and the dollar is dead. So, what do
Well,
you think that is going on now, especially with the Ukraine situation and Russia pricing its oil and commodities in rubles, and China um, internationalizing the yuan, and the Asian nations and some of the South American nations are moving to the Eastern Bloc to trade outside of the SWIFT system.
well, that's a worry. There's no doubt about it. I've spoken about this on my own blog. I mean, there are mechanisms in place right now where uh, they're trying to sidestep the dollar, which to me is a grave threat. Again, the U.S. dollar being the world reserve currency here, the Federal Reserve will defend that. And the enforcement arm of the Fed is the U.S. military and its entire arsenal, including its nuclear arsenal. They'll point that at anybody, including inward, to keep that system going. And that is a definitely a grave threat. It's been going on for a while, but it seems to be accelerating on the back of this whole war. Now, with regard to the war and every other single crisis that comes along, you know how it works. They're going to demand that we all support it, that we continue to throw cash at it. We're already in the tens of billions, soon to be in the hundreds of billions. It's going to be in the trillions. They're going to prolong this crisis as they prolong every single crisis they throw at us. And again, we're forced to support it. If you are anti-war, well, guess what? They're going to deplatform you. If
Mhm.
you are if you're speaking out against the whole COVID thing, well, they'll deplatform you there as well. The mainstream media is really being weaponized, I think, more so than we have ever seen. And people just need, to pay attention to what's going on. Listen to shows like yours, hopefully shows like mine too, so they can see through the garbage, the nonsense, the propaganda, because it's getting really bad. And I think, I would like to believe people are starting to get it, but there's a lot of people that just can't see, they can't see what's going on. They believe what they are seeing. They're being propagandized and they think it's real. And it's a very unfortunate thing.
But what does that say about the American public when they are buying this garbage that the government is selling them? And it seems like they are willing prey for the slaughter.
That's exactly what they are. People have been dumbed down for years. They continue to be dumbed down, and they continue to be propagandized. Look, people are like addicted to watching the mainstream channels, and they believe what they're being told is the truth. It's the same thing in any part of the world where you have a media that is controlled by a puppet government. It's always the same, going back as far as you want to go. It's a phenomenon that has been repeated throughout history. Towards the end of World War II, just for an example, the German people believed they were winning the war because that is what the media was telling them. It's the same thing here with the distractions, the propaganda, the fake news, the distractions, the deflections here. The fact of the matter is, we are in a global meltdown here. Central banks are continuing to inflate. They're not going to stop. They're going to keep throwing more crisis after crisis in our face here, pulling cash out of the future into the now to continue to inflate. And people are being sold the lies that, oh yeah, it started out as the transitory thing. It's not transitory. They knew it was never going to be. People like you and I speaking out since the beginning, realizing it was just all fake. It's just another way to keep people, I don't know, conditioned or whatever it might be into believing things that are just not true. And again, in this rapidly deteriorating environment, I think the propagandas are going to get even worse.
Well, on that note, when we look at I got to stay with the population of America for a second.
Yeah,
Um,
they're the most
with
dumbed down. I really think so. Because
yeah,
I talk to you probably do too. I talk to people from all over the place. My blog is pretty big, so I got people I talk to from all over the world, and they're definitely not as I'm going to use the word stupid as the people here. You see, look, people here in America, they're being forced into some kind of servitude, slavery kind of thing here, slave to debt, and at the same time they're being told everything is good. So what are they doing? Well, we're seeing a phenomenon that I believe a lot of people realize would happen in this kind of an environment. People continue to borrow, continue to enslave themselves in this mechanism here, and that's what it's designed to do. The American people, I mean, they got to wake up. I don't know if they need a smack across the face or whatever it might be, but look, I don't know about you, and I would probably guess it's the same for you, but I talk to people all the time, and people understand that they're suffering, and they talk about, oh my goodness, inflation is out of control, but they have no idea what the drivers are. They don't realize what's going on to them. They sit back and they point their fingers at what they believe are the obvious reasons behind it, but what they don't see is this whole shadow government, the central banks that are running the world, deliberately inflating, deliberately trying to make people's lives as hard as they possibly can in their effort to create a feudal system. And the wealth keeps moving right up to the 1% and 2%ers, as it always does. You got our puppet president and puppet politicians talking about how great our economy is, how strong everybody is. Meanwhile, real wages are cratering at their fastest pace in history, while inflation is skyrocketing. The dollar's real true value continues to evaporate, and it's just not going to stop. It's going to get worse moving forward, in my view. It's a terrible
well,
thing.
why do you think the people are so willing to buy into the government narrative? Because I was at the store the other day and I sent my son in to get some eggs, and a crate of eggs, which used to be about $3.80. When he
Yeah.
came out, and he told me, he said, I got the eggs, Dad. They were $16 and something. $16
Yeah.
for a crate of eggs.
Out of control. Well, but the reason why people are dealing with it's the boiling frog syndrome. They've been conditioned, and they instead of getting up and maybe rioting in the streets, or maybe storming the Federal Reserve, again they've been so distracted and propagandized. They don't know what to do with themselves. And what do? They sit around the dinner table and they complain about things like you just had said, but they don't want to do anything about it, because what do? They surrender. They've already surrendered their freedoms. They've surrendered their liberties here, hoping that their respective representatives are going to do something for them. But what they're forgetting, or maybe they don't realize, is we have no representation anymore, especially here. Well, it's around the world, but in the United States, I mean, people are believing in a system that no longer exists, unfortunately. And the United States is the hub, being that the Fed is the central bank of central banks. Why? Because we still have the world reserve. Maybe that's going away. And if it does, there'll be a bigger war, expansion of war, and they will kill whoever they got to kill, millions, just to keep the debt-based economic model and the Federal Reserve having the world reserve currency, which gives them enormous power to do whatever they want, in place. They will slaughter millions.
Wow. I'm going to say one more thing, then I'll let my co-host, because I know he's raring to say something. But with that said, let's piggyback off what you just said. They will slaughter millions to keep the debt-based system going. So where do you think that's taking us now that nations are pulling away from the dollar, and the Western system continues to take on more and more debt? And I remember on our last talk, you were saying that the system has to take on more and more debt, or else it just explodes.
Yeah,
Where are we going now?
Well, that's the nature of the debt-based economic model. It's not wealth-based, meaning they must create mechanisms, wars, expanding wars, whatever they got to do, anything, a crisis like COVID, to continue to pull cash from the future into the now. I mean, just with regard to COVID, I don't know how many people realize this, but they can look it up for themselves. There's still $1 trillion yet to be spent. That will be spent. It must be spent, because it's already budgeted in the COVID crisis, and that another trillion will be allocated to whatever they got to do. And what's that? And the mechanism here is simply, obviously, to keep the control mechanism going on, to keep big pharma reaping windfall profits here. Look, people, unfortunately, they've allowed this to happen to themselves. People like you, me, we can see a little further down the road, and that it's a huge benefit to I guess the people that listen to our work. And I think people who follow us, they understand it too. They're able to see what's happening. And unfortunately, the vast majority of people, either they can't or they're unwilling to open their eyeballs, because all it takes is a nanosecond. Just open your eyes, look around you, see what's going on, listen to the propaganda from the mainstream, how telling you how great everything is. And then you can just see, whoa, things really aren't so good. We got surging food prices, energy prices going out of control. We haven't seen anything yet. I think energy prices are going to surge. We're definitely moving into a food shortage or a crisis here too. Again, crisis after crisis after crisis. We already have a cost of living crisis, as you all know, as everyone seems to be knowing, and that's going to get a lot worse too. And the mechanism there is the government is going to the puppet government is going to step in and start giving away more free money. And what is that going to do? That's going to make inflation worse, because every dollar that is brought into the system, no matter what form it exists, just dilutes the currency, and inflation gets worse. And that's the real mechanism here, to continue to inflate. And that's the message I've been pushing for years.
So I'll see, Rashid, I know you have something to say. Go ahead.
What we have, it looks like a bank robber that's just constantly stealing money. What I want to find out, what do you think about the Russian Sergei Glasnost guy that's coming up with this new ulterior of world reserve currency? Have you heard about it?
Well, look, I think honestly that many nations around the world would love to have the world reserve currency. And I think part of the mechanism of what we're seeing right now is, well, I think a move by maybe certain nations around the world to definitely circumvent the dollar. And that really does worry me, like we started off, because they will expand the wars here to keep it going. There's no doubt about it. Look, they've already killed millions of people to establish the fiat monetary system, the petrodollar, the debt-based economic model here. And the privilege of having the world reserve currency is something I think that other nations are willing to fight for, and the Fed will defend. So, I mean, God only knows what they're going to throw at us next here, what other crisis they're going to bring about, how they're going to expand this war. Probably a false flag event or something really, really big to get the people to back it, because that's what they always do. It's probably already in the works. It's already been thought out, and they're just going to figure out a way to implement it, and that really does scare me.
But isn't that suicidal, because Russia has the capabilities to wipe America off the face of the planet? And if she continues to push and nudge and pry and provoke, you can only take so much before you confront that head on.
Well, I think that's maybe part of the plan too. I hate to put it this way, but I'm going to say it. We're kind of due for a world war. We haven't had one in a long time. And another world war, I'm not saying we're going there, but we're kind of due for it. And it looks like all the pawns are being put in place right now, would be yet another way to take away people's liberties and freedoms, would be another way to depopulate the world. I think that's a major part of this whole thing. They want to be able to control the population. Now, what easier way to do it than to, shrink the global population? I think that's definitely something that's in the works. I think it's been in the works for a very, very long time. And they had to, part of this here obviously is the creation of this feudal system here. People in the lower rung are very easy to control because they're already slaves to the government or the puppet governments. They're dependent on it, so they just follow along. And there's a lot of people like you and me, for example, like us three here, that are rebelling against the system. We're part of the resistance here, and we're a threat. We are a threat. I'm surprised that I've been allowed to be out here for as long as I have. A lot of people have gotten deplatformed, though. You got to be careful about what you say, because they will take action. So, you say things without kind of saying them. Like, I've learned to do that on my video blog. Like, I kind of say things in a way to get the idea out there without directly saying it. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I've been able to stick around so long. But they will look for opportunity to get people like you and me off, because they don't want people to hear this stuff, because maybe we are making a difference. And that's all I want to do. And I've been saying since forever is make a positive difference in the world. And I don't know, look, this is all scary, the environment we are in. But at the same time, you got to say, all right, you can't be afraid, because if you become afraid of anything, then you automatically become a slave. And we don't want to do that. We want to look for opportunities. Number one, to enlighten people and explain to them what's going on. Number two, okay, since we understand they want to destroy us all, and that's really what they want to do in the literal sense, well, what can we do to at least try to stay on the right side of it? Look, I look at things from a financial standpoint, but it goes way beyond that. I always tell people every Friday, love each other, care about each other, be charitable. That's huge. If people adopted more of that attitude, we'd all be a lot better off. And then at the same time, look, there's a lot of ways people can prepare for a worst case scenario, which I think they need to be prepared for. I don't think we've seen anything yet. I can only imagine what they're going to throw at us next. A series of more crises coming down the pike, and they're already building up to it. So we just got to be ready. We got to be ready for it.
So I'm going to let Rashid ask another question before I ask you a few things, because there's some things that I need to ask you about where we're headed economically. So Rashid, go ahead, ask your question.
I think they sort of pseudocidal the leadership of America by the way that they're attacking Russia and China and trying to, China makes damn near everything around the planet. And why
Yes,
would you try to cut them off? Yeah. It makes no sense of what they're trying to do. And they're forcing Europe into cutting off Russia gas. If Russia don't have any gas, that means that Mercedes-Benz and BMW and all of them don't have no plants to operate. It's suicidal what they're doing. Yeah. Do you agree?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, it's kind of interesting how things are playing out and how they're going to play. This is why I always say, people, we got to watch what's going on, pay attention to things here. Maybe there is a mechanism in place to, again, and here with regard to the United States, we haven't really been a producer of goods for a very, very long time, and we've allowed that to happen too. It's an astonishing thing how we've allowed manufacturing to move out of this country. We've allowed China to basically make everything, like you just said here. How has that helped us here in the United States? It hasn't. And unfortunately, we do, and I've been saying this for years and years and years. We do need to bring manufacturing back, but they're not going to. Again, they're creating a slave society here in the United States, more so than anywhere else in the world. They don't want. We don't make things. What do we do in the United States? We've become a service society. We've become a service society. We used to be, the biggest producer of the best goods that people can get their hands on. But no longer, it's not like that anymore. It's all moved around the world, and maybe they're restructuring this in some other kind of way. And maybe, you see, look, before anything can be built up, it has to be broken down first. Now, all part of this, going to what you said, I think it plays right into it, is none of this makes any sense, that it is kind of suicide. In a way, maybe that's what they want to do so they can rebuild the way they want to. All of this, again, has been thought out well in advance. What we try to do, people like you and me and the three of us here, is try to figure out the most likely thing. Okay, this is going on. What do we believe is going to happen? What's the most likely thing? And I believe that we're in a breakdown period. Maybe we can put it that way, where things are being broken down to be rebuilt in another way. And the people are not going to benefit from it. The people are already getting destroyed. It's unfortunate. And I really do believe we're going to see, again, eventually, look, we're going to get a meltdown here in the debt market. And that's going to cause a resource problem that people aren't going to believe. And I believe tens of millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions, are going to die. And that's all by design too. They're inflating this bubble in debt. They're not going to stop. We're going to get that implosion in the debt market eventually. And I'm not the only guy talking about it. You got billionaire investors talking about it. You got former Fed chair people talking about it. So what would that do? That would bring the entire system down to its knees. And then they will build it up, a whole new system. And maybe this is all part of it. It seems that way.
Well, isn't it kind of insane for them to believe that they can control the effects of the crashing system, and who's to say that they will be the ones in power? Because you're talking about the massive loss of life and the introduction of a new system. If you introduce if you have the same people who rule the old system introducing a new system, they have tendencies to take it right back to the old system. So for it to be a new system, you got to get rid of the old people who ran the old system. So
well, things are, we're going through definitely into a new global system, and in my view, a one world government run by the banks. That's just been their goal since the central banks. It's been their goal since the inception here. So they do have to get rid of the old system in its entirety. So they can, and then they got to make things get so bad, so absolutely terrible for people that they're willing to accept anything. And that means a surrender of more of their freedoms and liberties. So that's what it looks like it's leading to me. They're going to bring the world to its knees, at least from a financial standpoint. And obviously, look, once the debt bubble pops, this is going to become, again, it's going to be the worst. It's the greatest threat to humankind, period, the end. Forget about bullets and guns and whatever, and missiles. This is a way they can wipe out a lot. Seriously, it's crazy. A large portion of the population, by bringing down the financial system, by creating a major resource issue, skyrocketing inflation, for which I don't think we've seen anything yet. Commodity prices are going to go ballistic once the debt bubble pops. And there's going to be rioting in the streets. And that's when they're going to bring in military control around the world. You're going to see martial law. I'm certain of it, because they're going to need to at least try to establish some kind of order. And then henceforth comes the new system, whatever it might be. And it's just going to be, look what they're trying to do. They're trying to ease people into more control mechanism. They want to see how many people are going to comply. Believe me, they're keeping records of all this. People like myself, I refuse to accept these control mechanisms. I will not do it. we're definitely on their radar, and we're seen as a threat. There's no doubt about it. Look, I think they're probably going to try to come up with a way to deal with that too, and that maybe means deplatforming us or whatever it might be. But until that time, we're going to keep plugging away. We're going to keep doing what we got to do.
I remember the last time we talked, you were saying that when this thing goes down, the loss of life will be on a biblical scale.
Mm-hmm.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that for the people who may have missed that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. We're going to run into a resource problem, okay? And it plays right into what they're doing now: shortages of food, energy shortages, and everything else. And look, this is why it's so important for people to band together. What do they want to do? They want to divide us and conquer us by any mechanism that they possibly can, okay? By doing that, it doesn't allow people to come together. Hate your neighbor, hate this person for that reason, hate this other person for another reason, despise this other person for some other freaking thing. And that mechanism is clearly in place right now. If people were to get together and realize that we are not each other's enemies, despite the propaganda and the distractions and everything else, then we would be able to maybe pull through something like this. But look what they're doing. They continue the divide and conquer mechanism. It's not going to stop. And when we run into when the debt market implodes, resources, because we can't pull money from the future anymore, are going to become very, very scarce. I mean, first of all, I think we're going to end up in a credit freeze scenario, meaning there's no cash. The whole financial system will lock up. And once that's going to create panic in itself, people are going to go to their banks and realize, hey, there's no money in here. They can't go out and buy things like they do now. A loaf of bread is $40, whatever it might be, or whatever it might come to. So then these people in this kind of a scenario here are going to turn on each other. This is what they want. They want people to turn against each other. So what are they going to do? More control. And that's, again, what they're exactly going to do. Who knows? Maybe they're going to tell us we can't leave our houses. They were doing that during COVID. Remember, stay indoors. Don't go outside. Don't talk to people. It's a sick, twisted thing that is going on. And there's a lot of ways we can put this together and think about it. And to me, it just has always been very straightforward. Before years ago, when I first started this back in after the last meltdown, we realized what they were doing. Central banks on their mission to inflate, continuing to do so, hyper inflating the debt, only to bring it all down, to allow the debt market to implode, melt down the stock market, cause a major resource problem, so people would again become slaves to whatever system that they are hell bent, in my opinion, to institute.
So, what do you think with the food crisis that's underway? Because it's underway. There's a food crisis. The Chinese warned about it. The Russians have warned about it. You see growing poverty and high inflation in Europe. What will it look like here in America, the nation that has been the pride of all the nations for the last century or so, when the people no longer have the rights that they once used to have and the freedom that they used to have, and can't go into the stores and purchase the items that they used to take for granted? What do you think that it will look like here, and will there be global ramifications for that? Will this echo around the globe?
I think people are going to, again, what they always do. They're going to look to the government for help. Oh, help us. Help us. Oh, we're more than willing to help you. Again, that's what they're trying to do. Make people slaves to whatever new government system that they want to implement here. They've already taken away everything else from us. This is the final. I think we're in the end stages here. And the United States will be the last nation to suffer from what's happening here. It's going to sweep the globe, of course, and it's going to hit us here last. And it's just going to be about more control, unfortunately. That's why people need to get together with like-minded people, make friends, say hi to your neighbors. You're walking down the street, you see a guy or a girl you practically see every week, and you just ignore each other. He walks on this side of the street and you walk on this side. How about saying, hey, how are you today? What harm would that be if people were to maybe, embrace each other a little bit? I keep telling people we're going to need each other more than ever moving forward. But there are so many people that are just locked into that mindset that I don't know what kind of mindset they've been locked into. They've become compartmentalized. They're stuck in their little corner here and they can't break out of it. They don't want to. And that's another thing. People have been made to, I mean, they're working their rear ends off just to try to make ends meet. People today are borrowing more than they ever have. Personal debt, household debt, consumer debt is skyrocketing here. So they're becoming debt slaves and they have to work to finance that. So they're unable to engage in social activities or whatever it might be because they can't do it. They have to constantly think of ways to bring in more cash, to work as a slave for those fiat notes that they don't even own, that are there. They're IOUs issued by a central bank that are owed back to the central bank, plus interest they create out of thin air. Who came up with that system? It's so sick. It really, really is.
I'm going to let Rashid say something, ask you a question, and then I want to follow up what you just said. So Rashid, I see you rearing to go. Ask him a question.
I said, you better not say what you just said. You say that to most of the people, they freak out that they don't owe. Is it just a fiat note? They have no concept of that. But it looks like what's going to happen is, as me and the brother kept saying, a Mad Max scenario is coming to America, where it's just going to be a total chaos out there. I'm in California. Food prices have already doubled. Gasoline is $6 and something.
Yeah.
And that it ain't even got started yet.
No, it hasn't. And people, what are they doing? What are they doing about it? They're not doing anything. They're sitting back and just not complaining or whatever. They're being distracted. They're told this is the problem, and that's it's the war. Everything now is being blamed on the war. This started way before that. That's what they do. Distract and deflect. Oh, it's this, it's Russia, it's this. No. It's not the fact that central banks have been inflating on a massive scale forever, but especially since the last meltdown. Oh, no, it's not that. Oh, we heard from, was it last week or the week before, the White House saying, oh, it's not the trillions of dollars that they put out in fiscal stimulus and everything else. That's not causing inflation. Oh, no. It's always the same story. And it's like you just said, people don't understand at all how the system works. And if they did, I think they would probably rebel against it. The debt-based economic model is a curse upon the world. And if we could take that system back, we would be if we had a wealth-based system, we'd all be better off, but they won't allow it. It would give up their biggest way to keep people controlled and make them slaves to debt, nation slaves, individual slaves. It's a slave planet. It's absolutely insane.
Well, what do you you have to say to people who are always living above their means, being flashy? They always have to have the most expensive things. They always have to flaunt things and borrow, just like the government, borrow to present this so-called image before the people. Because if this system is spiraling out of control, and it is, what advice will you give those people?
Well, I tell everyone, man, people they become obsessed with spending, and what they're going to do, and this is a phenomenon that I said would occur years ago, and it is now, is that, we're seeing this two-tier society develop. Prime members of the middle class continue to borrow beyond their eyeballs to maintain the illusion of a middle class existence. Meanwhile, they're assuring themselves a spot in the lower rung of society as that wealth just keeps getting pushed right up. Look, people are addicted to it. It's like a drug. They must go out, they must spend, they must buy things that are useless to them that they're probably going to end up throwing out in a couple of years or whatever it might be. But that's what they do. People have been conditioned from the get-go to spend, to buy, to maintain some kind of fake illusion. They're flashed these pictures on the TV of people wearing elaborate jewelry and these beautiful dresses and, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all these, and they're like, oh, they want it. So that craving there, say, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to borrow some more. I have personal friends of mine who are in debt beyond their wildest dreams. And what do they continue to do? They continue to borrow. They continue to do it. Oh, they owe payments on this and they owe payments on that. Oh, it's only going to cost me an extra, $50 a month, but I can get this. And that's going to make me happy. And then it's so true, right? And then once they achieve that thing, they get that thing that's going to cost them the extra $50 to go. Then they get buyer's remorse. What did I do? But this is the society that we live in today. It's so out of control.
Yeah, I know people like that personally, and I don't care how much you tell them, they're not trying to hear. It's like they've been brainwashed into a mind frame of like, uh, I have to have, even at the expense of my financial security. And
Anything. They have been brainwashed. It's literally what you just said. It's brainwashing. It's a control mechanism as well. Spend, buy. You need this. So you have to go out and get it right now. Call the number on your screen right now so you can get this thing that you have no need for. But that's what they tell you. They're conditioning people. Boom. Every day, moment after moment, minute after minute. You see commercial after commercial. Call the number on your screen. Oh, you need this right now. It's so crazy. People need to turn off their TVs. Turn them off because they're programmed devices. That's why they're called programs. Hello.
So as this economic crisis gets worse, and we see that China provides about what roughly 93% of all the goods on the shelves, and America saying she's pivoting to Asia to confront China. What does the store shelves look like, and what does the street look like when they butt heads soon? Because they're going to do it soon. They're going to butt heads. What does that say when America sanctions China or try to do China the way that the European Union and America is trying to do Russia? What will the store shelves look like, and what will it look like on the streets?
Could you only imagine? I mean, really, could you
No.
only imagine? It's again, this is something that people definitely need to prepare for as well, because that's the wild card in my view. How they're going to play China with this? We already understand the alliance that has been built up for years between China and Russia. Let's see what they do, because that would definitely be a game changer in my view. And maybe at that point people will start waking up. I don't think so. People have been lulled to sleep, and I think they're going to need something dramatic like to happen, and that scares me too. What are they going to do next? Sincerely,
I mean, it could be anything. I was reading yesterday that a nuclear weapon, a miniaturized nuclear weapon, went missing at one of the bases in America, and they're saying, "Oh, don't worry about it." So that could be something. I'm like, these people are insane. But anyway, I'm trying to give the people who will be watching a clear picture of what to expect on the streets, and will you be able to go to the
crazy.
grocery stores to get food items and things that you normally get?
Well, like I said, we'll see how this goes with regard to the propagation of war. Whether this is, I think it's going to spread. I think it's going to expand for the sole reason that the expansion of war, the propagation of war, creates more cash flow than anything else for the corporations that are obviously controlling the world right now via the central banks. But to me, look, I look at things from the worst case scenario as a debt market implosion, and when the debt market implodes, I really believe we're going to get a credit freeze. What people don't understand, what am I talking about? When people don't understand that the last meltdown in 2008, it really wasn't the fact that the stock market was crashing and went to Dow 6,000. It was the fact that the credit market was freezing up. Businesses would not lend to each other. The whole system was about to lock. And if they didn't start injecting capital into the system like they did, QE1, the TARP program, the whole system would have ground to a halt. I mean, everything would have stopped. There would have been no deliveries to the stores, no transactions, no cash in the bank, ATMs, no money in them, no credit cards don't work, nothing. And that is going to lead to pandemonium. I think that's part of the plan too. We're going to get it. We're going to get an implosion in the debt market, and that is going to lead to a credit freeze. With regard to the propagation of war leading towards massive inflation and a food crisis and an energy crisis, that's obviously in the cards too. It's already happening. So just like we just covered, it's already happening. So people, need to ignore the fact that they're hearing the propaganda ministry, the mainstream channel telling you that we are at peak inflation. They're trying to convince people that miraculously inflation is going to start coming down because the Federal Reserve is now raising rates. It's another lie. Raising rates alone is not going to slow down the pace of inflation at all. The Federal Reserve would have to stop buying assets, stop ballooning the money supply, and they're not going to do it. They're going to continue to do what they're doing and create another crisis or expand the current crises to throw more cash at them. It's so freaking nuts, but people don't get it. They really just don't get it. I hope they do.
I know a lot of the times you always say watch the debt market because it signals where everything is going.
Yeah.
What made you focus on the debt market so much, and how can you try to get it over to the people who are watching or who will watch how important it is to watch the debt market, especially in the climate like the economic climate like we're in right now?
Well, look, the debt market is the largest market of them all. And the debt market also includes currency. Currencies are units of debt, they are not units of wealth. So if we understand that artificially suppressed rates, just going back to the meltdown of 2008, have fostered an environment of risk, meaning cash going into the stock market here, what does that tell us? What's the clear message here? The stock market derives value from what's happening in the debt market. So the stock market as a whole is a derivative of the debt market. So by realizing that as long as the debt bubble continues to inflate in a controlled way, we're going to see inflation continue to surge, the dollar continue to die, and cash remain in risk on assets, meaning equities here. But at one point, we're going to get a big sell-off like we've discussed here. The benchmark is the 10-year yield. That's where everything prices off of. Now, we're seeing a substantial rise in the 10-year yield as of late. We had the 10-year yield below 2% for years. And I had been warning everyone. I said, we're going to see the 10-year yield settle above 2, which it clearly has. And it's on its way to settle above 3. And that's going to happen too. As long as it does this in a controlled way, okay, it's a balancing act that the Federal Reserve is trying to do right now. The stock market will be okay. When we get the implosion in the debt market, we can see it happening. We're going to see the 10-year yield spike, let's say 3%, 3.5%, 3.75%, 4%, but in rapid succession, like 10 or 20 basis points. Then maybe in a couple of days, another 10 or 20, another 10 or 20, bang, 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 bang. Then you're going to see a lot of pressure on the stock market. So you're going to get a sell-off here in the debt market, a sell-off here in the stock market. And as we all know, cash does not grow little wings and fly to money heaven. No, it doesn't do that. It's going to move into commodities. You're going to see the cash flow out of the debt market, out of the stock market, and into commodities, which are going to skyrocket. And it's also going to go into cryptocurrencies in my view. Right now, looking at the market cap of cryptos in aggregate, you got about the one Dow component or the equivalent of, and I think that's going to go up 3, 4, 5-fold. So that's why I tell people, look, I know a lot of people don't like cryptocurrency. I think you need some in your portfolio. Look, this is just my take. People can have their own opinion on it. But understanding markets are not hard to understand. If you just realize how cash moves through them, all right? If we realize the inflated debt market is causing the stock market to inflate, well, what do you want to do? You want to be in the stock market at the same time betting against the debt, becoming your own central bank, holding hard assets like physical silver. I love, is my favorite asset of all time, and being outside the system at the same time, realizing we're going to get a meltdown at one point. So we got to watch for it, and we can see it by watching the 10-year yield. I talk about it every day on my blog.
So, and I'll let Rashid ask you a question in just a second, but following up on what you're saying, you are advising everyone to have cryptocurrency, silver, gold, tangible assets in this fall. What about the supply of food? Because you can't eat gold and you can't eat silver and you can't drink gold and you can't drink silver. So
Well, you need that
what
too.
about, yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Look, I tell people, I talk about things from a financial standpoint, but it goes way beyond that. People need to have a stash of food, water, and they need friends. They need people that they can rely on in a worst case scenario, people you can get to. That's why look, in your neighborhood, make friends with people in your freaking neighborhood. So in a worst case scenario, you guys and people can rely on each other, to band together when this happens, when we get that implosion, and we're going to get it. It's just a matter of how they're going to allow it to play out. It looks to me like they're going to expand wars first and maybe involve China in some way, shape, or form, and that would sincerely cause a problem here with food on the shelves and everything else and assets. Uh, we'll see. We gotta sit tight and try to stay ahead of the curve. That's all. That's all we can do.
Okay, Rashid, do you have a question to ask?
As you were talking about commodities, I go back to Pepe Escobar had a article about Russian geo uh, czar Sergei Glasnost with this new system that they're setting up. He said they're getting off a debt-based system and going into commodities and gold.
Mhm.
So
Well,
what
that
will
would be
that do to
that
the
would be the
world
way to do
market?
it. That would be the way
Mm.
to circumvent the debt-based system, to have a commodity backed, which would be if we were to adopt, and it won't be allowed to happen without millions of people dying, if a wealth-based system again, or a commodity-backed system, that would restrict spending. It would take the power straight away from central banks. Central banks power exists because they can do one thing, only one, and that is their ability to issue debt or manipulate it. Once you can, if we could pull that, if we could pull that power from central banks, that's it. Then the whole world would be a lot better off. But they have put so much money and effort and killed so many people already to establish the system, and they will kill millions more to keep it going. So yes, it's a nice thought that maybe they could
What
circumvent
he
central banks and go back to a wealth-based system, but I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime.
what he said was what he said what he said was what they're trying to do is they're telling their people to not pay into the dollar system. If you got debt for the IMF, don't pay it. Come up under this system of commodity based system where gold and oil and all your commodities, that's your real asset. And he said that they're going around because they already got China, Russia, and most of Asia, and they're going after the rest of the world. And the only one that's going to be left in the dollar-based system, what they're trying to do, is Europe, America, and Australia.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're going to have to see how that plays out. But like I said, I think it's a grave threat if they try to sidestep the dollar or try to dethrone the dollar as the world reserve currency. Who knows where this is going to actually end up going here? But it's interesting to see. It really is. But I really think that's another major thing. And I've been telling people for a long time, you need exposure to commodities here. And you can do this via an exchange traded fund or an ETF. You need exposure to a lot of things, oil and gas producers, obviously, right now, too. Well, look, with regard to, there's no doubt in my mind that there's a new system coming. What it's going to be, I have no idea. But I can't imagine it not being debt based, because the central banks, they're in full control, and everything is going exactly the way they want it to go. They started implementing the plan that we have a century ago, as people have remained lulled into this state of being disconnected from everything. They don't understand how the financial system works, nor do they care. All they want to do is go out and get paid via an IOU, something that they don't own. That cash that they work for is owed back to the central banks plus interest they create out of thin air. It's a very twisted system, and people don't understand it at all. They think that when they're issued those dollars, that they own them. They're not owned by them. They say Federal Reserve note. And again, the system just demands that more debt be created every single day, relentlessly. It can't stop. And that's why you're going to see more crises down the pike. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Let me say this. It's a very interesting time to be alive.
well, on that note, what do you think will happen as China picks up steam in her economy? Because now she is the center of the global economy, and she is not playing ball by the Western standard, or as America says, the international rules-based order. So America is now running into problems with Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, and a host of other countries. How can she stop them from moving away from the dollar? And even if she initiates war, there's no guarantee that she can be the victor in it.
No, that's true. Again, we're going to have to see how it plays out here. Um, I don't believe any of the economic data at all that comes out of China. I think it's all propaganda. It always has been. I don't think it's going to change now. Actually, everything's propaganda. Every nation right now is involved in their own propaganda war because it does clearly look like we're moving towards armed conflict here. I wonder even if that happens. Let's see if we get involved in another world war with that. Will they twist people's minds even further? Of course they will, and make them believe into something that doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. Of course they're going to do that too, because like sadly, there really is a natural selection going on. I've said this since I started this whole thing, and there's only a fraction of the people out here that really know what's happening. And that mechanism is going to be kept in place via the propaganda ministries, the distractions, the deflections, the false information. Um, I think people that follow our work are very lucky that they've, in a way, to come across real news stuff, so that get them to think. That's what I want people to do is think. Look, they may not agree with what you and I, or the three of us, are talking about here, but think about it. Does any of this make sense to you, or is it just so out there that there's just no way any of this is actually going on? I just want people to open their eyes for a moment, sit back, think about their life, what's going on around them. Are they even paying attention to it? Most people probably aren't. And they, again, being propagandized. Oh, it's Russia's fault. It's Russia. It's Russia. And then it'll be some other fault. It's always, they need a scapegoat. And it looks like they got it. Central banks clearly have their scapegoat now with Russia and inflation. Oh, it's Russia's fault. It's not our fault that we've been printing cash out of thin air in the trillions and the quadrillions. If you count in dollar derivatives, it's just out of control. But it's always the same story. Interesting times that we are living in now. But if you go back in history and look at how things have played out, it's always the same. As more as things seem different, the more they actually are the same. And it really does look like a build-up to something pretty big coming down the pike. So I want people to just be ready for it.
You said that debt is in the quadrillions of dollars. Wow, that is staggering right there. Could you elaborate on that? Because the U.S. is saying, well, we're only 20 some trillion dollars in debt, and then now they're saying that the global economy is $70 trillion in debt. But I was doing some research, and I saw that they were saying that years ago. And I'm saying, how is it that the economic barometers are showing that the situation has worsened, yet the debt remains the same?
Well, when they're talking about debt, they're looking at debt at face value. But if as in anything, any market, there are layers and layers of derivatives under the derivative bets are side bets. So in other words, you have an asset XYZ, and then you have another bet underneath that, which is deriving value from whatever this asset is doing. And then you have another side bet off of this derivative, and there are layers and layers and layers of it. And it's not just with dollars, it's with anything else. So there are layers of derivatives that are existing underneath every single asset, even debt. So no one even knows really what it could be beyond the quadrillions. There's no way to quantify it. It's a pretty astonishing thing. And it goes back to understanding the financial system. When you look at the value of something, well, what would the actual value of it be if you were to add on all of the side bets or all of the derivative bets underneath it? People have been hearing about the derivative market for years, and it's not a hard thing to understand. A derivative is simply something that derives value from something else. Henceforth, derivative. It derives value, so it's a derivative. And there's not just one. I mean, people are buying, let's say, an option on a call option on XYZ. Well, there's derivatives connected to that one call option or that one put option. And then you can play that a whole bunch of different ways. You can buy a call, you can sell a call or a put, and then layer these in all kinds of different. It's astonishing how crazy the system is, but it is what it is, man.
It is. I highlighted one of our viewers' comment, and he says, I can see the U.S. doing something major with Taiwan that makes China have no choice but to act. Gerald Salente said many times, when all else fails, they take you to war. What is your comment on that?
He's absolutely 100% right. Joe is one of my best friends. We talk all the time. I'm a contributor to the Trends Journal. Absolutely. Then listen to that man. He's very smart. Have you had him on your show?
No, I would love to have him on.
Oh, you got to get him on. He would probably love to be on your show.
Oh, I would really love to have him on because I love I love how he gets amped and hyped up and everything.
He's a passionate guy. It's hard not to be. You know, look at me on my work. I freak out. I literally feel my blood pressure going to the moon. You know, I really do. I have a meltdown. I have meltdowns almost every week. Well, a few times a week.
Rashid, you had something to ask?
So what you're just saying is we're living in one big giant casino with the derivatives, right?
Pretty much. It's
a giant casino and the world is playing from it, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. People are involved in something that they have no idea what they're involved in, and most people can't beat it. It's very difficult here. It's very difficult to beat the system. It's very difficult to stay ahead of the system. You got to constantly be on top of it. Like me, for example, like I don't stop. It's around the clock. I hate it. You know, one day I'm going to retire from all this and I'm going to be a happy man. But until that point, you know, it's probably shortening my life by decades. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So what do you see in the near future of America from this time to 2023 or 2024?
Well, obviously more control, obviously a lot more debt. Who knows where the markets will be? We just got to keep our eyes on the debt market. There's nothing going on here. Nothing really that gives me, well, risk is rising in this market. There's no doubt about it. And I have a gauge for this. It's right on my website, traderschoice.net. Anyone can look at it. It's called the MMRI, Mannarino Market Risk Indicator. I was looking at it this morning. It was 176, which is in the mid-range of moderate risk. Actually, it's almost to the high range. The high range starts at 200. So we're getting close to it. And that doesn't mean the market's going to crash. Increasing risk in the market just is a tell. One thing that we need to look at to gauge what's going on here, and risk is rising. But risk is a double-edged sword too. With more risk comes reward too. So you got to. But that's what I say. Look, don't be afraid. If you're going to take something away from this video, this interview we're doing here, is realize that you have options. You should think about what it means for you, how this will affect you, your family, what we've heard today. What can you use in your own life to make your life better? Not just your own life, because I think we got to think about other people too, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your country, the world at large here. What can you do about it? You can sit back and do nothing, which is a big mistake, or you can take action. Take action against it. Realize what they're doing to you. They're trying to destroy people. So try to take the opposite side of that. That is, betting against the debt, becoming your own central bank, holding hard assets, thinking about, if you're able to put a few dollars away every month, where should you be putting your cash to work for when commodities explode to the upside? And I think they're going to. And my favorite asset is right here, yet again, silver. Physical silver. It's my favorite asset. I think it's the most undervalued asset in the world.
So do you think in the near future there will be food shortages in the United States? And if so, what does the street look like?
I think there's definitely going to have food shortages. I think we're going to see food shortages of everything. I think we're going to see energy skyrocket, food prices skyrocket, way worse than they are right now. And to me, you know where the proof is? Listen to the propaganda ministry. They're telling you everything is going to be okay. And when you hear that, you should realize that things are not going to be okay. It's really the truth. That's how I look at it, man. I'm telling you, it's so sick.
So, again, for the people, because it seems like you and I and Rashid, we can go over this a million times, but some people just don't get it. No. They believe in the propaganda of America that everything is going to be okay and that it's going to get better and that that America will somehow pay down her debt when all of the so financial people are telling you that it is a mathematical impossibility for her to pay down her debt. And if it is a mathematical impossibility for America to pay down her debt, and you say that this is a debt-based system and America is the most powerful nation in that debt-based system, does that mean more war, more poverty, more feudalism, more destruction, and more enslavement?
Yes to everything you just said. Everything you just said. Absolutely. Yes, 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 and yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people may look and say this is all gloom and doom, but what do you have to say about that?
No, it's not all doom and gloom. It's all, if you can look at it from that perspective, but you can say now is the time to take action. Okay? You can sit back and say, "Oh my goodness, I can't do anything. I surrender." No. Don't let fear take over your mind. Take action. Do something about it. You know, think about it. Like I said, think about the things we spoke about here. Ponder what you can do about it. Does it make sense to you or does it not make sense to you? Some people this is not going to make any sense to. And that's just the way it's going to be. But some people are going to hear this and say, "You know what? I may not have agreed with everything that they said, you and I, all three of us here, but maybe some of this stuff, wow, makes sense to me. Maybe I should do something about it." Listen, I don't want to be a party pooper here, but I kind of got to get going.
I was just getting ready to let you go. Greg, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. This guy's a stand-up guy. Every time I talk to him, he's like, "I'll be there." And he's always here. Thank you so much, Greg, man. We appreciate this so much. And if
I'm
you
glad to
can,
be here.
Thank you.
give a word for
having
me.
me. Let's do it again. I like being on this show. It's fun.
And give a word for me to Gerald. And
I will. I
okay.
absolutely I will. I'll shoot you an email right after this.
All right, I appreciate it, man. You have a blessed one.
You too. Take care, everybody.
All right. Now
All
we'll
right.
be here for we'll be here for a few more minutes, a little bit more. But as we because we have to be very careful on our words. There are certain words that YouTube won't allow us to say. There's certain phrases that because last week we were planning to do 3 live shows, but out of the blue they took down some content and they told me that we were suspended, and when we appealed they told us that the appeal failed. I can pull it up for you to show you and everything, and they were telling us that because someone spoke about politics in a certain way, a guest that we had, out of an hour and roughly an hour and 50 minutes, he stopped. The guest we had spoke on the political situation for about 1 to 2 minutes. They took the 1 to 2 minutes out of, and they suspended us and took down not only the video with him in it, but they also took down other content. So we don't want to continue to go through that. So we have to use code words when we're talking a lot of the time. But as you heard Gregory Mannarino saying that this thing is going to be very bad. And a lot of us, we don't sit around. I mean, we don't sit down and we don't contemplate the situation because it's dire. And this stuff will not only affect you and I, but it will affect everyone that we love, all the way down, all the way down. Think about this. Some people can't go a few hours without eating, putting something in their mouth. Think about when you have to go days without eating. And then think on top of that, when you have to go days without eating and your children have to, and your children too, and your spouse. Think about that and think about what that will mean for your neighborhood, for your city, for the state, and for the country at large. There will be rioting, there will be violence, there will be, because for the people who are preparing for this, the people who are not wise enough to prepare for this, they're going to be caught up real bad, and they will think, "I'm going to take yours so that I can provide for my family." And any man or woman in his right mind is not going to allow someone who has misspent and not prepared for the situation to come into their home and take what they have prepared for their own family. It's do or die with that. So you have to think about the ramifications of this, because the situation is bleak to dire. You have anything to say, Rashid?
Yeah, you're right about that. It's gonna be as we said, a Mad Max scenario.
Yes.
You have people that's gonna be preying up on one another. It's gonna be a horrific situation when, as you said, somebody that don't eat every couple of minutes, they throwing something in their food. What if you have to go a week or 2 without eating? it is that is a scenario that nobody wants to face, because it means a collapse of the society. And it looks like it's coming. It looks like it's coming. And as I keep going back to what the Pepe Escobar was saying with this alternative to the dollar-based system, if they're going on commodities, gold, and anything that is tangible, they're not going to allow you to come into there what they're setting up with a bunch of debt base. He said that's over. And if that's over, if you don't have gold or oil or anything to make it your backing your currency, then nobody gonna want it, and that spells doom for America.
Yeah. And on a side note, I forgot to say this at the beginning. I was asked in an email about my glasses. These are not prescription glasses. I don't have prescription glasses. These are glasses that reflect the light. I have the bright lights for the show shining in, so I have these glasses and they reflect the light. Okay. Also, for those of you who are listening, I have very sensitive skin, so sometimes I can't shave. So if you have a product or you know of a product, let me know. Hit me up at hiram1555 at yahoo.com. That's hiram1555 at yahoo.com. I mean, that's why I was hiding my face most of the show, because I don't like to look like a savage or whatever. But the reality is I have very sensitive skin, and sometimes I just cannot shave. But back to this situation here. Think about what Gregory Mannarino said, and when you said something to him about the casino, I was about to bring that up myself. I was going to say House of Cards, when he was talking about the derivatives and how the derivatives have other derivatives, have other derivatives, have other derivatives, and it could be anywhere from the quadrillions upwards, probably into the quintillions. I mean, this is crazy. This system cannot last. And anyone who believes that it can is a fool, or especially if it's a debt-based system, and it is. How can a debt-based system be reformed if its lifeblood is to issue debt and then to feed off the people after issuing the debt? You still there, Rashid?
Think of it, it's a Ponzi scheme, but it's yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's a Ponzi scheme, and it's a real good Ponzi scheme. If you don't have any natural resources, you issue debt.
Yeah.
And the people that do have natural resources, they'll sell you their commodities for debt.
You know.
I mean, he real slick.
Yeah, that reminds me of a show we did, remember? And I was talking about that. And I said, the Western world, I'm telling you, they are some good con men. They're good con men. Think about this. Europe has little to no
They're
resources.
the best in the world.
They have little to no resources. And yet they are Europe, Australia, and America, and Canada. Well, Canada has a lot of resources, and America has a lot of resources.
The so-called free world.
Yeah, they have little to no resources, and yet they are called the rich nations, but they have no resources, and everything is based off commodities and resources. So what they do, and this is a scheme, I'm telling you, only a con man can come up with this kind of scheme. Okay, you have everything. I'm going to give it the denomination of the price of what that should be worth. I'm going to take some trees, make it into paper, and put ink on it, and give the denomination and value to that paper. And
wait a minute. Put your face on it.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you
X your face on
paper. and when I give you the X amount of paper, you're going to give me your commodities. I'm going to refine them here, and then I'm going to sell them back to you triple the price. And on top of that, when you make me mad or go against my policies, the money that I gave you for your commodities, I'm going to sanction you and make them worthless. That is one of the greatest scams.
It's no good.
That is one of the greatest scams ever. And no one ever thought about
that. You gotta admire him for the way he comes up with these schemes and plots, and that he hoodwinks people with. You got to give it to him.
I mean, I don't think people sit down and think about that. That is one of the greatest scams in the history of the world. To be able to take paper, which is plentiful, and ink, which is plentiful, and then just assign a denomination to it, and then tell you don't get to decide the value of your commodities and your products. I'll tell you what the value is according to the money that I have. Then I'll give you this paper in return, and you give me your commodities and your tangible assets. I'm the rich nation, you're the poor nation, yet everything comes from you. And when I get mad at you, the paper that I gave you is null and void. I sanction you. That is a Ponzi scheme. That is a scam that even the greatest con man on the street could not come up with. And America,
you right about
and
that.
Britain and the European nations have gamed the entire world, and that's why China, that's why South Africa, that's why India, that's why Russia, and that's why their friends and affiliates are now trying to move away from a debt-based system, because they now see the Ponzi scheme and they see how it has been detrimental to their independence domestically and economics and internationally. Because remember, I'll let you chime in just a second, but remember, the way this Ponzi scheme works is, if I issue the money, then I can make the prices fluctuate, and I can cause inflation in your home. I can export the inflation from me to your home, and I can cause instability within your country, right? When I don't like what you're doing, that is against what I'm trying to do. That, man, I'm telling you, that is one for the record books. There, that is a scam. Go ahead with what you say, Rashid.
It took them a while to catch on. Only a couple of 100 years to catch on to the scheme, the other nation. But yeah, they're a little slow, but they'll catch on eventually.
Look,
you're right. He's a great con man.
Hey, when the magician,
the Wizard of Oz. That's right. Yeah.
So you look at
the Wizard of Oz, all that smoke and mirrors and stuff, and then when you look behind, he's a little bitty guy back there pulling levels and stuff. But what we're saying is this: what I go back, disagree with what Gregory was saying. This new system is going to tear down the dollar-based system. Now, if you got commodities and gold, like Sergey Glasser was saying, that if you have money in the you work for the IMF and you got you done borrowed money not to pay it, don't give them anything. Come into this debt-based, into this system, this new system that they're having, gold and commodities, and then your money will be more money than their money. Just let them go ahead on and fly by the way. Anybody in his right mind would take a currency based upon something other than a currency based upon nothing. Like he said, even the dollars that you have is not your dollars. They're owned by the Federal Reserve. You own nothing in his system. Let his money, his Ponzi scheme go by the wayside, and this is what's coming into view. The rest of the people in caught on now, and you what they say, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool everybody all the time. That's what's happening right now. They done caught on. It's over with.
And see what it took, and most people don't understand what it took was China and Russia behind closed doors. Don't think that Vladimir Putin and Russia was caught off guard by leaving the $300 billion in assets over in different banks or whatever. They knew that they would incur losses on that. That's why if you read all the reports leading up to that, Russia and China and the BRICS nations and their allies had already been buying up huge amounts of gold and silver and all kinds of commodities. And they needed something that would be so great that will open up the eyes of the entire world. See, it's one thing to tell somebody that somebody is a thief and a con artist, but it's another thing to set them up and watch them on camera steal not only your wealth, but the wealth and investments of other people. And that will open people's eyes and say, well, I can't do business with that. So what Russia did, Russia purposely allowed the money to be stolen. And this is something that was not talked about in the mainstream media. Not only did Russia got its investment back, see, all you heard was that the United States took $300 billion from Russia. Now, what you didn't know is that after this took place, Vladimir Putin gave orders to his financial team to find out how much money in Western investments were in Russia. And they came to the conclusion that there was between 350 to 650 billion dollars in Western investment in China. And with the stroke of one pen, they got their money back, because Vladimir Putin said that the 300 and some billion dollars, 300 and some billion of that money could not be transferred out of Russia at all until they got their money back. So they're holding it. And the other part of the investment, he said that for it to be removed from Russia, it had to be on approval of the president's office. So this is the part that you did not get in the mainstream media. This is not the part of the stuff that you got from the so-called alternative media. It was all gloom and doom. They took Russia's gold. They didn't take Russia's gold. Russia's gold is in Russia and in the BRICS nations, because the BRICS nations, under the leadership of China, has established an alternative to the IMF and to the World Bank. They have the BRICS Bank, and they have the AIIB Bank, which is a development bank for nations who may need loans, so that they don't incur the wrath or the policies of the IMF, which is a predatory lending machine run by the United States and Great Britain and the Western world. These are things that you don't get in the news. So I know Rashid has something to say, because he's looking like he has something to say. So go ahead.
You know, I was thinking that the America and their partners, the great Brinks truck robbery, ain't got nothing on them. They come and steal a whole billions of dollars and then give you nothing, and then tell you better take it. So and then run around talking about somebody stealing money.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
And to show you that they stole it, what is the National Security Advisor a few days ago, when specifically asked about the returning of Russia's $300 billion, he said, no, we're keeping that. We're keeping that. We have no intention of returning that. So this was a heist. This is what I'm telling you. This was a ski mask, a heist on the international scale. And most of you can't contemplate this. And then, the people in Washington, D.C., and these people are robbers, thieves. Go ahead.
And then get some little bitty guy with a ski mask to go rob a bank, give him 100 million years.
Yeah. And then
he steal a couple $1,000. This cat steal trillions, and then nothing is said.
Yeah, because they have suit and ties on, and because they're in government, and they're stealing. They've been stealing the wealth of the world for decades, upwards of past centuries. They've been London and Washington, D.C. have been stealing the wealth of the world for decades, and that is why every policy that Washington makes, you see London tied at the hip, or vice versa, because these two, most people, when they look at the dollar, they don't understand that the sterling pound also is tied to the dollar. They don't understand that the New York Stock Exchange is tied to the London Stock Exchange and the London Gold Exchange. And the London Gold Exchange is actually the largest gold exchange in the world. So these two are they're tied to the financial hip. So this is why you see them in Ukraine. Something that was missed by Scott Ritter as he talked about the conflict and confrontation between America, NATO, and Russia in Ukraine is that, they often go back to 2014, and Scott Ritter even went back further than that, but they often talk about 2014 when the Maidan took place. But what they don't talk about is that as the Maidan took place, the United States sent in a security team and whisked away all of the gold of Ukraine and brought it back to the United States. They stole the gold of the Ukrainian nation. This is a fact. I'm not lying. I'm not making this up. These are facts. You can research it. You can Google this if Google will still let you do a research search like that. But they took the Ukrainian gold and brought it back to the United States. They did that when they bombed Libya. All Libya gold and reserves, money reserves that was abroad, they kept it. They split it up amongst the nations. All right. When they went into Iraq, two of the first things they did, even though it cost Iraq a lot of money, a profit, the first thing they did after they secured the oil fields, they took the gold reserves from Iraq and they switched from the euro back to the dollar, because Iraq had changed from using dollars in its oil and gold sales, oil and silver.
That's the reason why.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the reason why they had to go in with the weapons of mass destruction. It wasn't no weapons of mass destruction. It was switching from the dollar to the euro.
Yeah.
Like you said, these are thieves.
And with Gaddafi, it was about him trying to make a United States of Africa, and he wanted to make the dinar a gold and commodity-based currency. And do you know the ramifications of that? If he had succeeded, the wealth transfer would have taken place overnight, and Africa would have become the richest continent on the planet, and Europe, being weak in resources and lacking in resources, would have been a debt. The debt would have been like just overwhelming for them, and they would have been bankrupt. The United States also. So these are things that are missed in the mainstream media that we'll bring it to the forefront. Go ahead.
And now this is what's taking place with China and Russia and that economic deal that Pepe Escobar was talking about. You see, China and Russia and the rest of them are a little bit too big to go and bomb at will. If you're gonna bomb them up, they're gonna bomb you up. So he can't do that. He can't go and slap them down like he did Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi and them. So what this time is, he done bit off a little bit more than he can chew, and so now he's in a caught between a rock and a hard place. As we were saying, can you imagine any man in his right mind any leader in his right mind would stop bringing in Russian natural gas to power his plants and heat his home, and you got nothing to replace it with? What are you gonna do? Stand there and freeze to death?
And the little bit of gas.
Mercedes-Benz
I was saying, and a little bit of gas that I'm sorry, we have a delay. I'm sorry for everybody who's listening. There is a 3 to 4 second delay. I'm so sorry. So sometimes Brother Rashid and I will talk over each other, not meaning to, but there's a delay in our connection with StreamYard. But go ahead and finish your thought, Rashid.
I said what they're doing is to do that. That means Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Porsche, all of the German plants, a lot of Europe plants, it stops. You're asking them to commit economic suicide. Now, how long? With this, what's the German leader, Schultz? How long will he stay in this as the chancellor when his country shuts down? It won't be very long. Like let me go a little bit further. Even with this Pakistan, as I was telling some of the brothers also, this could be an opportunity for Khan and them in Pakistan. Push Khan to a side, bring in these corrupt politicians who've been bought off by America, right? And let them sit up there and do what they're doing. And he stir up the people. The people can see that they've been bought off. Nobody that stupid. It is a way like Vladimir Putin did to get rid of the Atlantic integrationists, push them to a side. I think this is the same thing. That they hollering about that. They think they walking around with a big smile. We got rid of Khan. It's gonna backfire.
Yeah, it's not over yet. That's not over yet. And a lot of people, and this is the thing. This is why this show is so vital and so crucial to the people. Even though we get blocked, banned, our subscribers get taken away from us. The views are artificially suppressed, and for anything small, we get suspended because it's vital to you. Listen, when you look at news, most of you compartmentalize it, and the globe, everything is interconnected. They tell you this. They openly tell you that everything is interconnected. So when you see something happening in Pakistan, it's most times it's not organic to Pakistan. It is a byproduct of Western policies and Western moves on the globe, economically, politically, and geopolitically. And we see that all around the globe. We see it all around the globe. And the world is becoming fed up with being dictated to by the Western world. And that's why you see an upheaval and an uprising globally against U.S. and Western policy and Western domination and Western dictates. So I was one day, I interviewed the late great professor Dennis Etler. As a matter of fact, I had the pleasure to have the last interview the week that he passed away. He and I were supposed to do about 4 interviews together, but he passed away. But we have the last interview with him, and it's called The 800-Pound Gorilla in the Room. You can go check that out on YouTube, or you can go to Patreon. It's free over there. But in that, we talk about the so-called rules-based order, and we talk about the so-called international order, or the so-called Western world order. And in this, Mr. Etler was talking about that this system is racist to the core. Dennis Etler. And this rules-based order is a code word for Western domination. This is from Mr. Etler now. You can go look at the video over there. When this is over, go check it out. Go check it out. It's a long, I think it's about 2 hours and something. Check out some of it. So this is what America is talking about when she's talking about challenging the BRICS nations. This is what she's talking about when she's talking about aggressiveness from China and aggressiveness from Russia. Because even though Russia identifies itself as a European nation, it really is not. Only 20 to 25, 25% of Russia resides in Europe. Russia is the largest country on earth. 75 to 80% of Russia is in Asia. So America and Europe feels threatened that Russia may turn towards Asia. And all of these policies that they're implementing is to prevent that, because they know with Russia, as Hillary Clinton says, Russia, it is a shame that Russia has so many resources. We should balkanize Russia and take it. Hillary Clinton, and I'm paraphrasing, but those are her words. So they had plans and designs on Russia for the longest, and anyone with common sense can see that the Ukraine crisis is a byproduct of American policy. If someone say, oh, it goes back to 2014, well, let's go back a little further. Jimmy Carter, okay? President Jimmy Carter, he had a national security advisor by the name of Zbigniew Brzezinski, right? He is the tutor of Barack Obama. Well, was the tutor of Barack Obama. And his daughter is a host on MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski. So he wrote several books. And in one of his books, he had the Grand Chessboard, or the Great Chessboard, and he had one about Eurasia. And he said, he who controls Eurasia controls the globe. And in one of his books, he talks about Ukraine itself. And he said that America should try to take Ukraine out of Russia's sphere to prevent Russia from reemerging as a global power. That, in a nutshell, should show you that America was involved in all of this prior to the invasion by the Russian forces. I mean, do you, some of you people, do you understand that? Oh yeah, thank you. The Grand Chessboard. One of the people in the matter of fact, I'll highlight it for the people to see. So they'll see who said it right there. I really want you to go get that book and read that book, because before America enacts policies, she goes through think tanks. They write articles in all kinds of publications. They issue white papers and all of this stuff, and then it becomes policy. And what we're seeing now is the policy that was enacted decades ago for America to remain the preeminent power globally. Go ahead.
And all of those people, Victoria Newland and her husband, and Brzezinski, all of them original people come from that region, Poland, Ukraine, and they hate themselves some Russians.
Yeah,
they hate themselves some Russians completely. Matter of fact, all of them might join the Nazis, go against the Russians. That's why you see that they're doing everything they can to attack Russia. But Russia's a little bit too big, a little bit too powerful to slap down like he did Gaddafi. They're not going for it. It's a new day coming. And this is what most of the world will not understand, cannot see. The people are not going for the Ponzi scheme anymore. They see what do you call it? 3-card Molly, with a cat shuffle around and he gets looking with the P, looking at the P. Everybody knows it's in his hand, not in up under the P's now. So now, it's a little bit too late.
And now I'm gonna make a direct plea to people. This thing is getting very serious, and the lives of you and your family are at stake. The security of you and your family is at stake. You better start making preparations for what is underway, not what is to come, what is underway as we speak. Because this thing, as you heard Gregory Mannarino say, it has the potential to wipe out hundreds of millions of lives, even billions of lives, because people are taking it for play. You're watching your court TV, and you're watching your Kardashians, and you're watching all of the foolishness, the Will Smith slap. You know, that when that went on forever.
Basketball and the football.
Yeah. And the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket. Prices are exploding. Food is becoming more scarce. Trade is being cut off. Debt is ballooning and exploding. And then we have the threat of war and more war spreading. And yet your mind is still focused on who makes it to the NBA playoffs. Your mind is still focused on the Jordans that comes out. Or go ahead.
And if you do watch some of the mainstream media is unwatchable. I mean, the lies and the crap that they put on there, man. You be saying, where are these people? What planet are they on? The absolute outright lies. I mean, they used to put a little bit of truth. They don't even do that now. They just lie.
Excuse me. Yeah. Yep. Because a lot of well, I won't say a lot. I say all of the mainstream media is outlets are infiltrated by intelligence agencies. So, like what is it? Anderson Cooper, CIA agent. You see all of these other people, they're compromised, but you can come and get news and real truth from us. We're going to have another live show this week. We're going to have it either tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll be doing it probably around the same time. We want you all to join us, because it is very imperative that you get the truth. Some of us we don't like the truth, because the truth is hard to swallow sometimes. Yeah, it's hard to swallow. And sometimes it's not to your speed, because it takes all that imaginary stuff out of you, and it takes all of this foolishness out of you. And some of you don't want to be men and women and accept the responsibilities that are on you to be a protector of your family, to be a provider for your family, to be a asset to your community. Some of you don't like that, and we got excuses every day. Right? But we're going to have to kill those excuses and be who we are. If you got to man up, right? You got to man up. You got to woman up.
Listening to this mainstream media, you would have you believing that any minute now the Ukrainian army is going to march into Moscow and hang Putin on a lamppost. When Scott Ritter and them says the other way around.
Yeah.
They're getting decimated.
Let me say this. Let me say this, and keep your thought. And by the way, I'm glad you brought that up. When the United States said that Russia was losing the war, at the time they said that Russia had already conquered an area the size of Great Britain, the entire UK. Now we find out that even as Russia moved back some of its troops, they have acquired roughly 2.5 times the size of the UK in Ukraine. And if they wanted to, they could push further. But I just wanted to say that so that the people can get an idea of the military operation that is going on outside of the Western media. Go ahead, Rashid.
What do you say? Ukraine is about the size of Texas, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
That's a big area. Texas is almost 1,000 miles long, right? And so, but don't believe the hype, as the old saying is. They're not winning in Ukraine like the mainstream media said. They're losing, and like Scott Ritter said, they're losing badly. And in one of his interviews, he was saying that about the Biden. He don't like Biden that much because of a certain deal that they had against one another back in the Iraq War. But what he's saying is, don't believe everything that you read, because some people believe that mainstream media and will fight and die on what that crap that they keep putting out. All right, bro.
Yeah. Now, we're going to close the show. As always, we come in the same way we go out. We like to thank God for blessing us and for protecting us as we give you this truth. We like to thank him for putting it in our hearts to stand before you and give you the truth. And please take these words to your heart, and act on them, because you will regret not acting on the information that you are receiving. I'm telling you, lives are at stake. Hundreds of millions and even billions of lives are at stake. Be serious, man up, woman up. Now, on that note, we go out. I got to say, I love you, mama.